you can really get stuck in the dark, just, and escaping, because sometimes we don't want to own our full power.
Right.
There's like hidden shame, and you named it. The victim is quite a common archetype, and it can really come up, and bless our hearts, give us compassion, because lots of times we have reasons for feeling that.
Yes.
We really do. But it's all about sort of leveling up the perception to contain both and of ourselves, rather than just either or and just cutting off half of our life, which is not only things we don't desire, but things that we do desire, and things that we need to reclaim are hidden in that shadow stuff.
Welcome to the Dimensional Shift for Starseeds, where starseeds, quantum spiritualists, and alien enthusiasts gather to shift time, space, dimensions, and realities. I'm Revi, your guide, and I work hard to create a safe space for the spiritually tired, confused, and abused to reclaim their sovereign power and take back soul custody. This is the universe according to me. Our guest today is Nicki Ojeda, who goes by Tatiara in the mystical world. Tatiara has been reading tarot cards and working with essential oils for nearly 35 years. She offers insight, hope, and power through her tarot, clairvoyant, and past life readings. She offers custom essential oil blends based on your online Zoom reading, as well as an intuitive and archetypical insight. Tatiara specializes in online past life and tarot readings, offering the querent a look at their probabilities and current trajectories, enabling them to make informed decisions and changes and to create their desired outcomes. She also gives people tools to correct their unconscious energy patterns through archetypical awareness and personal mythic correspondences. You can find more about Tatiara at tarotwithtatiara.com or visit her guest profile page on dimensionalshifter.com/Nicki Ojeda, NICKIOJEDA. She's also created an offer just for Dimensional Shift listeners. If you're interested in following up with Tatiara, you can go to her website and book an online tarot or past life reading with her. The coupon code for $10 off will be given at the end. Welcome to Dimensional Shift for Starseeds.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Revi.
We're going to be talking about myths and archetypes. I think that's going to be amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about you and your spiritual path, and maybe how some of these myths have come into your life?
Yes, well, at a very young age, I discovered Carl Jung. Probably about 10 years old when I started reading it, and I couldn't get enough because it introduced me to a numinous and mystical side of life. And then I put it away for a while, and I just experienced a lot of different natural mystical experiences that I couldn't quite put into a framework until I revisited all of that later. And I started doing tarot readings at the age of 15. At the same time, I started blending essential oils, and the essential oils and the tarot and all sorts of other crystals and everything like that all have a vibrational frequency. And these vibrational frequencies would just sort of like connect in my mind. And I found that they're very related to archetypes. And myths reflect archetypes, but it's more of a mythological state of mind. And as we create our own myths, and we can glean information and guidance for life from existing myths, but it's all about creating our own.
Yeah, I love that. So give us a brief overview of some of the archetypes that you find.
Okay, well, there are 4 of the most common archetypes that Jung delineated. And those are what we call survival archetypes, and every person on the planet has them. The victim, the saboteur, and they call it the prostitute, but it is really someone who does whatever they have to do to survive.
Yeah.
And so we want to transcend those. And he also delineated within the psyche the archetypal sections or archetypes of the psyche, which are the persona, the shadow, the anima or animus, and the self. And these are the seeds of all the other archetypes, because the archetypes contain the scope of the human experience. And so the persona is sort of what we put forward. The shadow is repressed contents of our psyche, which often contained our talents and things that we tend to project on other people, as well as undesirable qualities that, if not sifted through, can jump out at the wrong time.
Mhm.
We have the anima and animus, which it's sort of outdated language, but you could think of it as the yin and yang within, the heights and depths within, but it means like the masculine and feminine within. But that's just a doorway in language wise.
Sure.
It's all about almost like two ways of being, like a right and left brain almost.
Mhm.
And then the self is what our potential, our own energy signature would be if we were living in our full.
I've read a lot of Jung too, and I've done a lot of my own shadow work, and it's
Mhm.
really fascinating, especially in the shadow. That's where I've spent most of my time healing and working on, and how those archetypes have really stood the test of time. Jung was around, what year was he? He was in
It's the late 1800s,
late
mid
18 yeah,
1800s.
yeah, 1860, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, I
Um,
think he was still alive in the early 1900s. I used to know it all really well, but
when you're talking about these archetypes, what is a good way to approach them when you want to start healing and improving your life and getting to know yourself a little bit better?
great question. What you want to do first, look at your story. Does it serve? Does it serve your highest good, which is automatically the highest good of all in the collective? And are your stories running unconsciously in the background? So again, shadow work comes into play because we may have these wonderful qualities, but they're being expressed in almost like a shadow archetype form. And so the more we go within, and it really does start with journaling and meditating and feeling things you never allowed yourself to feel, seeing things you never allowed yourself to see. It is not pretty, but as long as you can do it without judgment and without identifying too much with the material and with all the self-compassion, because we all go through that. That can begin to start the process of shifting archetypes that you have a proclivity to carry into their higher expression.
Yes, and I agree 100% with the self-compassion. And I've always encouraged people when they start really in-depth shadow work that you need to be in a good place to be, like you said, compassionate for yourself, because if you're going to look at those ugly bits, you're going to have to be able to not judge them, because when you start judging them, that can actually make the shadow worse if you're not careful.
That is so true. And also the same thing can happen with talk therapy. Talk therapy isn't necessarily appropriate for actually dealing with trauma, the deep-seated stuff, because it's stored in our body beyond the intellect and beyond the
Yes.
mind.
And it can, even though the point is to deal with the trigger, it can trigger up worse things just trying to deal with the old triggers. I've had that happen in therapy before, and it's not very fun.
Right. And it's almost inevitable in a way, because our culture, we are not exactly taught to be with and allow our negative feelings. If you're having a healthy childhood experience and something bad happens, you feel it and let it pass through you and move on. But how it often happens in our culture, hopefully it's changing, but we are basically told, don't cry, don't feel that, don't express that, be good, sit still, be nice, all of that. And it keeps that energy from flowing naturally, and it sort of gets stuck in there. So it's not easy, even when you revisit the first time, because we have to turn off that internal voice of judgment that's probably not going to consciously be there. Like my own story, I really was guilty of spiritual bypassing in my 20s, because I love all things new age. I am a light worker and all of that, but really it is a thing where a lot of people, they do that as an escape, guilty, and they don't really deal with all that terrible, to varying degrees for people. I had a lot of religious trauma, went to
Yes.
Jesus camp and all that. And I thought that just by, doing yoga and being vegan and channeling into the starry realms and the heights would be enough, but it isn't. And that being said, doing shadow work and processing all that can become addictive for some people, because after shadow work, then what?
Yes.
You have to go ahead and channel that light. It is within us. We are made of stars, literally. So we're not meant to continually do shadow work either. It's really a balancing process.
It is a balancing process. I really like that. I think that you can bypass either way. and you
Correct.
can get stuck in the love and light, and then you can get stuck in the almost like the victim where you just have to keep going over all of the bad things that happened in your life because like you said, what's next? Trying to learn how to balance the two is kind of the ultimate goal for everything, I think, and I agree with that.
Great point too. You can really get stuck in the dark, just, and escaping, because sometimes we don't want to own our full power.
Right.
There's like hidden shame, and you named it. The victim is
Mhm.
quite a common archetype, and it can really come up and, bless our hearts, give us compassion, because lots of times we have reasons for feeling that. We
Yes.
really do. But it's all about sort of leveling up the perception to contain both and of ourselves rather than just either or and just cutting off half of our life, which is not only things we don't desire, but things that we do desire, and things that we need to reclaim are hidden in that shadow stuff.
Yes. Oh, I love that. The both and instead of the either or. That's really good. Yep. I think that should be shared a lot more for sure.
It's one of my favorite consciousness
Yes.
keys.
Yes. I love that. I'm gonna have to meditate on that. That's gonna be what I meditate on next. I really like that. Okay, so tell me about how these archetypes look like in a person. I know we talked briefly about doing like a case study if you have an example with someone you've worked with or something like that. Tell me what these look like in someone's life.
Well, one very large example that I have is someone who was living in every way the archetype of the addict. And the person in question was very psychically gifted, very almost like you could say destined to work in the mystical realm or to share mystical consciousness. But let's see, because of their background, because of their limitations, they just weren't able to channel the mystic archetype, which is really the opposite of the addict.
Mhm.
Because an addict is seeking a spiritual experience. They're seeking, different states of consciousness.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what the mystical eye provides. And of course, we all have all of these. But, this person was an addict for years. They tried to pursue their psychic ability. The family's like, we don't believe in that. Because, they had that family enmeshment thing where, for years, this person just couldn't be an individual. And the story does have a happy ending after a lot of terrible tribulation regarding, being an addict and hurting everyone. Sometimes the time just comes when that person knows it's time to do shadow work. It's never the same for everybody, but a knock upside the head will usually be a clue. And, not to make it sound easy, but they were able to realize that these states of consciousness that they were seeking through alcohol and drugs and they don't call alcohol spirit for nothing because
Yeah.
they were seeking their own soul, their own relation to spirit, but it was all colored by their punitive deity in their religion. But as they grew and matured, luckily they didn't overdose or die. They are now a thriving mystical counselor. So I'm sharing their story.
That's lovely. So, which of the archetypes was reflected in their life? You mentioned four main archetypes. There was the child. What were they? The child, the victim,
The saboteur, the
saboteur, and the
prostitute.
prostitute. So, were any of those, or is the addict a separate
They're
archetype?
really not as cut and dry. These are all just doorways for us to understand these energy spheres. They're like energy patterns, frequency, vibration, and they do overlap. And I would say that, the victim played over and over in their head. And then when they would start to make progress, that saboteur, full of guilt, you're not doing what the family wants.
Mhm.
So it's like, I can see how those two would definitely have an impact on how the addict expressed itself.
I see. So, if someone were in that position, where would they start? What will be their first things to start processing those inner archetypes and work past that so that they could overcome the addiction or overcome whatever they are to overcome so they can express their true self. Star seeds are gathering all over the globe. Here at Dimensional Shifter, we're gathering too. The difference is we act as guides for each other, filling in the missing pieces of the cosmic map without judgment, hierarchy, or dogma. If you're interested in joining up with star seeds from all over the galaxy, head over to dimensionalshifter.com/Discord to join our free Discord server.
Okay, so I would go back to that where you really look at your story, really look at your inner self-talk about how you process things that happen to you, because things happen to all of us. And it's almost like what paradigm and worldview are at the fore in your automatic reactions. And as you assess your automatic reactions, you can start to see how this unconscious pattern plays out. And the more you make these patterns conscious, I mean, it all sounds so easy, but this is, these are steps, these are doorways, but it's always a journey. That's why you have to keep that self-compassion going in. But these reactions then can become responses more and more, become more creative. If you've always been a victim, you can start to tap into your warrior side. You can start to tap into your rebel. But then again, these have like a bipolar shadow as well, because when you deal with the rebel, it's oh so useful and I love it, yes. But you want this rebel to be love aligned. You want it to be aligned with your true north, highest good. So it's all about tapping into that true north of who you really are. I definitely recommend journaling and meditating. It's all about going in there, but you can't stop once you start. That's the thing. It's not something to be dabbled in, and if you can be counseled by someone, that might be appropriate, but that's a personal choice.
And so when you're talking about using other archetypes to help you, how do you go about doing that? Is that a conscious choice where, okay, right now I'm going to tap into the rebel energy and interject that into my life a little bit? Or how do you think of using those?
Okay, well, you do want to try to tap into them consciously and mentally and spiritually. But the one key that people don't talk about is how much trauma is stored in the body. And it's just by moving the body with intention and making sounds and like letting it out. It's almost like, but you don't want to go over the top, like screaming and, well, I don't know, maybe you do need to scream a couple times, but you don't want to do it in front of other people. This is not something where you want to create a whole different harmful archetype, but it's sort of an unfolding journey, but you have to feel your feelings, let them go, look at the flavors of the story and see if you can name them, because you don't have to stick with the known archetypal frameworks. You can be like, I've really been acting like a martyr in this relationship, and instead you want to channel, I'm ready to be a sovereign, you can say king or queen, however you feel it, but you're ready to be sovereign. You're ready to be real and true. And you have to be done playing these psychological games with yourself and with others. And that involves really looking at, am I getting some kind of almost like a neurotic payoff by being a martyr? But you'll find the price is higher than you think.
Yeah, for sure. I have a very strong martyr family figure in my household that is very exhausting for the rest of us at times. Not that we're not exhausting too, but that one in particular I can relate to. So how do these relate to creating the myths in your life? Let's tie it back into the myths.
So it's all about having your own myth unfold in a way that your true north, your highest good, can come forth and benefit the world. So you look at your proclivities, you look at what you love, even the things you have not claimed that you love. And you can put them all together like, oh, I've always adored being on stage, so I have a performer. I always wanted to help people, and I've had all these terrible things happen, so I have the wounded healer. And I've never been afraid to be myself, and I'm so done with everybody else's crap in a positive way. So you have a sort of a sovereign thing. How can you combine that to express, your own signature of energy in the world. It's like you just have to be creative. It's all about tapping into our own creativity and trusting ourselves, really. Trusting spirit and trusting that energy that's in our bodies. Like we are the cosmos right inside our bodies. And there's no separation like we think there is.
So is exercise for doing something like where you could write yourself, using the myth metaphor here, write your story as you're a deity, in the sense of writing your own energies into a being that you can sort of visualize and almost create an identity outside of yourself, so you can see what you look like outside of yourself. Am I making sense?
Yes, you're making perfect
Okay.
sense. And you're sort of tapping into something else too that I think is important that we've lost in our culture. And when you think of the Eleusinian mysteries, when you think of Greek and Roman plays, they were rituals. And personally, pagan, witch, Wiccan, all three. I'm also eclectic, I will tap into Persephone. She will walk in me. Hecate will guide me. It's almost like you have to allow yourself. Okay, I'll put it succinctly. We need the unseen realm.
Yes.
We need it in our world. And when it's not there, we suffer. And some people say, oh, that's the religious impulse. It is, but it's all about personal gnosis of spirit.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be religion. And so when we tap, that is the perfect place to tap into archetypes. Like if I feel my boundaries have been violated, I will tap into Vesta, the goddess, as she rules sacred space, both within and without, and as a container, so that I can keep the influences building like a cauldron, or like an oven where they bake their bread, or like the sacred temple. It's a contained space. It's a sacred space. And just by tapping into her, these patterns are so old that we don't even have to know what they're about to just allow them in.
Yes, exactly. Whenever I feel especially lost, I always end up getting what I see as signs from some ancient deity calling to me. And recently it's been the Morrigan. And even though I don't align, I am pagan, I am mostly Norse pagan. I'm not huge into deity work, but I always accept any kind of energy that comes forward like that, because I feel like there's a message there. Like if the Morrigan's coming forward, then it's probably because I'm not feeling sovereign, I'm not feeling powerful, I'm not recognizing that I'm in some kind of enmeshed battle that I'm not even realizing, and I need to take a look at where I'm not standing up for myself and putting my power forward. And
Exactly.
also letting something die. Generally, there's with the Morgan, there's also something that needs to be released and let go of too. And I've had several instances of that the past year. Loki has been with me a lot too, just as this energy of have some fun. It's been such a hard year for everybody. And so I just, even if it's just the energy of the being, rather than seeing them as a deity necessarily, as a ruling whatever power, I think that just tapping into that energy is really powerful too. And so I really kind of like the idea of taking elements of each of those deities to kind of build your own identity as a deity yourself, that you can look at and say, oh, well, I've been studying my astrology really heavily, but like I have a lot of Venus, I have a lot of Mercury, and I can put those into one being, and I can see that part of me, and I can see where it's reflected in my life. And so then just studying each of those different deities and bringing those types of archetypes in themselves into one person, and then being able to see, oh, so that's kind of how all of my energy bubbles together and swirls together, and create a person outside of yourself that you can personify and look at more objectively, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I have to interject that those deities were originally related to in that manner. That ruling factor thing is fairly new. So really, they just named them. They named them what they named them. We can rename them. And yes, we do tap into them. And they're not punitive deities like that.
That's true. Yeah.
Karma's like cause and effect, and that's it, really. That's how I view it. So yeah, deities becomes a sticky word like that.
Yeah.
But it's more like they're names for energies, really. They are, just like you said it. And yes, in one situation, I'll feel like something like Hecate and then some sort of Valkyrie warrior woman. And like Hecate will show up when I need guidance through the dark, just like you said, and something's got to die and it hurts and I don't know what to do. Those dark deities are like dark energies, not like bad, but something missing in our society. It's like the depths where we gather sustenance. We need that quiet inner processing time. That's like another thing that, healing, if we need our silence and we need our alone time so we can tap into the real, the true.
Yes, exactly. And we always overlook the creation part of the darkness. We always think of darkness equals death, and well, what comes after death but creation? And I think that that's often missed and overlooked too.
Right. And, you can see it reflected all throughout our society symbolically. We're always about do this, doing. And all these people are suffering from anxiety because we're never allowed to just be.
Yes.
And if you do, well, you better not just be you.
Yes.
You better be what we tell you to be, because you're designed to not be good enough in our world, So it's like, with the advent of, we can turn the lights on whenever we want. I mean, even just something as symbolic as that, we've lost a relation to that necessary going within, and it's just something that I hope people are realizing more and more. And it was a weird gift of the pandemic that a lot of people, myself included, just realized that, this quiet time to be it's indispensable, and I'm never giving it up again.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think the hardest part has been just not being able to go without when you are ready to go without. It's almost like being stuck in the womb, like you're stuck in there and you can't leave. But I think it's going to start shifting after the first of the year. So I'm really enjoying talking to you, Nicki, and I think everybody else is really enjoying this too. Where can everybody find you on the internet and on social media so that they can follow you and reach out to you if they want to talk?
All right. Well, I offer online tarot and past life readings. And these are both very interesting personal ways of exploring archetypes that I can assist with. And you can schedule an online reading by going to tarotwithtatiara.com. And then my Facebook page is Tarot with Tatiara. You can also schedule there. And then I have an Instagram and Etsy all under the same name. Also, I will craft essential oils based on your reading, and archetypes tie into that too. It's like the correspondences of the planets and astrology. It's all these vibrational frequencies, and they can just tie in really well. And one aspect of archetypes is the hero's journey. I'm sure we've all heard of that, and that's really been inspiring to me. And the major arcana of the tarot is really just laying that out. That is the hero's journey right there. So, there's just clues of getting, how can I adjust my, archetypal expression, but it really is about tapping into one's creativity. And I like to help people. The way I look at tarot and past life, it's not like I'm telling you your future. I see it as, this is a snapshot of your current probabilities, your current trajectories. And I'm going to give you information so that you can make as many informed decisions as you can to create the outcomes you want.
Yeah, I think that's a really wise way of looking at it.
Right, because I never see anything as set in stone. I mean, certain things we're born into that are fated, like, I'm white, so they tell me, things like that we're probably not going to change, but we can change how these patterns express. We have so much more power than we realize, but we need to stop wasting it where we don't have power and just sort of like let that flow and be our true potential. And make sure that we aren't making decisions from some wounded inner child, which is another big archetype that we all have to overcome.
But I know a lot of people, including myself, I only used oracle cards for a really long time because I had a fear of all of the darker tarot cards. I knew that if I drew those cards, it was going to be this self-fulfilling prophecy where I was going to have that fear and I was just going to set it in stone. And even though I knew I could change it, the fear was going to keep it in place and it was going to happen because I was afraid of it. So I just avoided tarot cards for 2 or 3 years. And so I think that that's a really helpful way of looking at tarot in general, is just that it's a guideline.
Yeah, after 35 years, I still hate to see that 10 of swords. I'm like, oh man, I got work to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
I don't want to be doing work on myself. I just want to hang out and play. And like when I get the devil, it's like,
Yeah.
I do need to let loose and have fun. I need to party on some level, but just not go overboard. It's like, it's different checks and balances, but yeah, they're unsettling. They really are, but it's like, that's the thing. And when I give readings, I don't sugarcoat. Like when I see the tower, I will let someone know that there's a high probability that some expectation isn't going to be met the way you think it will. It's completely catastrophic. It's just like a little symbol of a certain probability right now. And, it can change like within a day. That's why I refuse to say that anything is going to particularly happen. Like someone asked me, so what's going to happen within a year? And I just don't do readings that way. I know some readers say I'm reading for the next year, and that doesn't resonate with me. It's like, I can, sometimes I am clairvoyant and I do get pictures, but sometimes I don't know until after the fact, exactly what it meant. So it's like, I just like to give them tools to do the work, because that's what we have to do. We have to do the work,
Right. Yep, I agree. I know that anytime I've tried to read out past even a month, and not even just with tarot, but I do energetic readings for the collective and for people, I won't go past a month. And even that reading these are the energies that are present in the current trajectory, can be subject to change depending on decisions we make. But this is how the energy is flowing right now. And then I keep track of it as the month goes along to see what's changed and keep updating that, because it changes so fast. It can change with one decision. It literally can. So
yeah, that's really smart to track it too. It really is. Just like, see, when I'm doing past life readings, it's different because usually I'm talking to someone who has, it's not a parlor trick and it's not a past life regression, none of that.
Yeah.
But what it is if someone has a pattern that they can't find the cause for, it's sort of like I will literally see an energetic blockage and it starts to form a picture. And I do have that gift. It's a specialty of mine where I can see into their past lives and only what's relevant to the archetype that wants to be expressed or has been blocked from being expressed. And I find a lot of it comes in through our ancestral and psychic DNA, So even if it were to all be symbolic, it's still there.
Yes. Was there anything else you would like to say to the listeners today?
Well, I will say to the lovely listeners, please feel your feelings and then let them go, because we are made of stars, literally, and it's all within us.
That's great. Well, this was really awesome, Nicki. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having great conversation.
Yes. If you love learning from Nicki about archetypes and mythos and the shadow, be sure to check out her website, tarotwithtatiara.com, or go to her guest profile page on my website, dimensionalshifter.com/Nicki Ojeda, NICKIOJEDA. If you'd love to connect with Tatiara, she's created a coupon code just for Dimensional Shift listeners. Head to her website to book an online tarot or past life reading and use the coupon code SPELLCAST, all one word, for $10 off an online tarot or past life reading. If you're a Shifter member, head to your membership portal and listen to Nicki's exclusive. If you're not a member, head to dimensionalshifters.com/memberships. Pick your plan, which start at $8 a month, and you'll have access to all of our guest exclusives. Coming full circle here, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear your take on the universe. You can do so by leaving me a review or a comment on my Instagram. Drop me a note and let me know your perspective so that we can learn from one another. If you want more Dimensional Shifter, you can find my website at dimensionalshifter.com. You can find my Instagram at Dimensional Shifter. If you would like to be a founding member of the Discord server, that can be found at my website, dimensionalshifter.com/Discord. Of course, all of these will be in the show notes. This is Revi signing off.